Hey y'all, it's me again. I'm continuing with my book called Secret Lives of the First Ladies. Okay, let's continue. Eldest of 8 or 9? Most history books claim that Martha Dandridge was the firstborn of 8 children, but the truth isn't quite that simple. Apparently her father, John Dandridge, like so many other planter aristocrats at his time, had a taste for mistresses. According to an obscure document written years after Martha's death, John Dandridge had an affair with a woman of African Cherokee descent. The relationship produced a mulatto who was younger than Martha. Though little more is known about her, it is probable that Anne grew up in the Dandridge household as a slave and, when not toiling at her chores, a playmate of Martha's, horsing around. Most of us perceive the mother of our country as demure and retiring, but the truth about Martha is a little less refined. Remember, she grew up in a wild frontier society. At least one anecdote survives to give us some idea of her rambunctious childhood. Apparently, she once rode her horse onto the porch of her uncle's estate and scared the bejeebers out of everyone by threatening to ride her steed into the house. She was talked out of the escapade by her scandalized aunt. Think your in-laws are a pain? Daniel Parcutis, Martha's first husband, was loved by everybody. He was a cheerful, considerate man who wanted nothing so much as normal, peaceful existence, and no wonder. He'd been raised by one of the angriest and wealthiest nutcases in all of colonial America. John Cuttis IV, Daniel's father, was a man whose eccentricities often bordered on insanity. Daniel was terrified of him. John seemed to think that no one was good enough for his son, and hence his fortune. He immediately opposed Daniel's match with Martha. To his credit, Daniel never gave up on his young fiancée, though he couldn't muster the courage to confront his pop either. The situation fetched. John went so far as to give some of his most expensive and treasured possessions to a common mistress in Williamsburg, as if to say that she deserved it far more than that dangerous gold digger. He even threatened to cut Daniel out of his will altogether. As was found by some of Daniel's closest friends who managed to talk John out of opposing Martha. It is measured of John's erratic disposition that he was so easily persuaded. We'll never know precisely what was said to him, though a common legend has it that John, one of the most prominent horticulturists of his day, was won over by word of Martha's own gardening gifts. Martha, the murderess? Even after his death, Martha continued to be haunted by the legacy of her father-in-law, as if to pester his son and daughter-in-law from the beyond. John Cuttis, the first, drew up a will that can only be called sadistic. He stipulated that his illegitimate son by a slave woman, mulatto Jack, be freed, and that Jack inherit a handsome portion of the Parcutis fortune. Daniel was to care for Jack until he was of such an age as to take charge of his inheritance. As strange as this may seem to us today, the will was a terrific headache for Daniel and Martha for one primary reason. According to the laws at the time, mulatto Jack could not be freed except by the royal governor's consent, which means that the will, though required by law to be carried out to the letter, was impossible to fulfill. It also meant that the young couple would need to spend a fortune on drawn-out legal battles to get the will changed. In the meantime, mulatto Jack, Daniel's half-brother, lived with the newlyweds in their house until a resolution could be reached. The resolution arrived in September 1751 with Jack's death. It needed to solve the issue of the inheritance. Jack was young and, by all accounts, healthy. Of course, sickness and infirmity could creep up on anybody quickly in the 18th century. Accounts record that he succumbed to something involving a pain in the neck. But one can't help but gasp at Daniel and Martha's unexpected good fortune. Did Daniel and Martha actually kill the poor fellow? We'll never know, but given the fact that both were almost universally praised for their honesty and goodwill, it seems more likely that if mulatto Jack was murdered, one difference decided to bring the young couples troublesome issue to conclude. Without their knowledge. Makes you wonder, though, doesn't it? About the pause, I had to talk to my sister about her cat. Blown glass. Martha never forgave John Curtis IV and blamed her first husband's early death on his father's mind games and abuse. Shortly after Daniel died, she paid a visit to the Williamsburg mansion that had been her father-in-law's main residence and auctioned off the remainder of his valuable possessions. That is, except for his priceless collection of hand-blown wine glasses. Those she proceeded to smash in a spectacular act of vengeance. Luck be a lady tonight. No, this says luck be a lady. During the Revolutionary War, newspaper branded Martha a loyalist. It's safe to say that they were mistaken. During every winter of the war, while both sides were in quarters until the spring campaign season began, Martha traveled from Mount Vernon to be wherever George was with his troops. She became something of a surrogate mother to the freezing, threadbare soldiers, creating bandages, mending uniforms, and so forth. She often acted as her husband's clerk, copying much of his correspondence and being trusted with military secrets. Though terribly fond of the latest fashion from overseas, she insisted on boycotting foreign finery during the war and made a point of wearing only colonial homespun. Her efforts are definitely appreciated. One regiment valued for its christened themselves Lady Washington's Dragoons. Chapter 2. Abigail Adams. Born November 11th, 1744. Oh, my sister's birthday. Nice. Died October 28th, 1818. Married October 25th, 1764. Presidential husband, John Adams. Children, Abigail Amelia, John Quincy, Susanna, Charles, and Thomas Boston. First Lady from 1797 through 1801. Astrological sign, Scorpio. Religion, Congregationalist. Remember, all men would be tyrants as they could. When Abigail Adams brought her young son, John Quincy, to Crest in front of their home to watch the Battle of Bunker Hill from a distance, it was without a sense of horror. To her, the fighting was an inevitable reaction to what she considered British tyranny. In an age when women were expected to stay silent, Abigail Adams always spoke her mind, and always rushed to her husband's defense. She was a patriot to the marrow of her bones and remained a passionate and extremely eloquent champion of all things American till her dying day. The other two loves of her life, John Adams in politics, would help forge one of the most extraordinary relationships in American history. In an age when most women were content to take a backseat to the husband and keep their mouths shut, Abigail gave free rein to extraordinary intellect, forming one half of the brilliant and loving partnership, and her husband wouldn't have had it any other way. Aww. Born in Weymouth, Massachusetts, Abigail Smith seemed destined for greatness from a young age. Though persistent health problems kept her from going to school and receiving a formal education, the homeschooling she received from a well-read family more than made up for it. Hers was a childhood shaped by keen conversation and debate around the dinner table. She acquired a lifelong love of books, particularly poetry, and it wasn't long before she was smart enough to teach herself French. When at the age of 15, she met the feisty and successful lawyer John Adams. There seemed little indication that two would one day be hopelessly in love. John was unimpressed, remarking that Abigail showed a disturbing lack of candor. He would be singing a very different tune only 2 years later, by which time, having had a chance to spend much time together, they two had become obsessed with each other. Kind of like me and Robbie. The newly married couple moved into a house that John had inherited, right next to his childhood home. There, while Adams went on lawyering throughout Boston, Abigail took to running their small farm. By 1772, there were 4 children to be raised: daughter Natalie and sons John Quincy, who would later become president, Charles and Thomas. Abigail developed into a thrifty and efficient housewife, taking control of the household finances and making investments in land that would help support her in later, more troubled times. Those troubled times when they came proved almost too much even for the resourceful and courageous Abigail. While John was off in Philadelphia during the Continental Congress, his wife struggled with maintaining the farm with her own loneliness. The Revolutionary War made things much worse. While John struggled through diplomatic postings to Europe, Abigail passed the war years by casting musket balls, scraping money to get defeat her family, hunting down whatever gossip she could about the war, and, most importantly, writing to her absent husband. The couple maintained correspondence with each other that reads like a history of the times co-written by two lucid, well-educated lovers. They were movingly the relationship, exchanged ideas and humor, and longed for the day when they'd be reunited. That day arrived in 1784 after Abigail, employed by John to join him in Europe, decided that the perils of an ocean voyage were nothing compared to remaining away from him. After joining her husband in France, Abigail followed him to England, where he was made America's minister plenipotentiary to the court of St. James's. Europe was the capstone to Abigail's education, a 4-year course in foreign culture that widened her already considerable intellectual horizon. It made her worldlier. It also galvanized her love of America. She glanced at the filthy streets of Paris, blushed at the sea of scantily dressed performers, and horrified by the French servants' classes' laziness and impertinence. In England, she grew bored with court customs, chafed at the open criticism of her husband. But criticism, unfortunately, was something she was going to have to get used to. John Adams had acquired a reputation as a tireless promoter of liberty and an abrasive pain in the ass. His vital role in the shaping of the young republic earned him the first vice presidency, but his argumentative, headstrong nature quickly earned him enemies. Much of criticism was directed at his haughty belief in the notion that the new country should be led by an educated elite. It was the sort of thing that many, including the eminent Thomas Jefferson, found repulsive. Abigail, always a supporter of her dear husband, made feel the fight by backing him 100%. Once John succeeded George Washington as president, the criticism got worse. Abigail's fear of rule by popular mobs was no secret, and her influence over her husband was equally well known. She was soon being called Mrs. President behind her back and mocked as a domineering aristocrat with queenly aspirations. Abigail continued to view herself as the president's partner, which she was, and struck back by commencing pro-Adams journalism in the press. The whole message situation left a bad taste in her mouth and convinced her that the United States might just succumb to another revolution. Abigail was more than just the savvy sounding board for her husband's ideas. She was a sort of capable partner who made life in the political limelight a lot easier. While John embroiled himself in the business of government, his wife drew on years of experience to run a tight presidential household. Though Washington may have lived beyond their means, but under Abigail's control, the Adamses managed to save enough of their $25,000 presidential salary to invest for retirement. It's an important fact often forgotten when taking the measure of Abigail Adams. Sure, she was the first woman to be both a presidential wife and mother. John Quincy would one day make it to the White House. The proto-feminist who reminds John Adams to remember the ladies during the draft of the Declaration of Independence and the ego of her ingenious, multi-talented husband. But she was also a person whose strong beliefs were forged in the cauldron of adversity, a capable, practical, hard-headed New England matriarch who appreciated the benefits of liberty so dearly purchased. By any measure, she was an extraordinary woman. Please rate, comment, and subscribe down below. And please ring that bell notification so that you can know when I upload. And if you're on TikTok, please follow me and like my videos. And please pay for something on my Mercari and eBay if you can. And if you want my username for those, just comment down below, okay? Bye.